It's not what happens to us. It's how we respond to what happens to us. And therein lies our choice. We have to hold hope while we're going through our challenges. Otherwise, what are we holding on to? In the end, hope is what keeps us elevated. Once we lose hope, we sink.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you all to a new edition of Beyond the Cancer Diagnosis interview series. Today is my pleasure to have Harriet Cabelly, writer, survivor, teacher, as I can say, oncology, psychosocial issues, but more I will ask her to introduce herself because her curriculum is so broadly that it is better to hear from her. Harriet, nice to have you with us today. And
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Very nice to be here, Adrian, and thank you for inviting me. So I should introduce myself further.
Who is Harriet Cabelly?
Besides what you said, I actually used to be a teacher. Way back when I started, I was a special education teacher. Then I went back to school for my degree in social work. So for the last numerous years, I'm a clinical social worker. So I worked in the schools, but the last 15 years, I work in private practice, meaning I see clients one-on-one, I run groups, I do some talks. So I'm a therapist.
You're a therapist, so it's also kind of teaching, but
Absolutely.
but now you touch, let's say, the soul of the persons. Even though when you teach children, you also touch the soul of that innocent person that the child is. Now you touch in the other way.
Yes, that's such a good way to put it. I like that you touch the soul, because that's what makes, to me, the most meaningful work is connecting to people on that deep level. And that's just like air to me. I love it. So we say my husband is retiring. He's moving on to leave his workforce, and I'm moving up. I'm just doing more and more because it's life, it's meaning, it's what I love.
You just started a new chapter in your life. Your husband, you just started, yeah.
Yeah, like I started a new chapter, right? But I didn't just start. I started a while ago, but I'm saying the more I do, the more I want to do. And the more opportunities come my way, like writing this book that we'll get to.
We'll get to. But first, I have to ask you about teaching. What is more difficult to teach? Children or adults with cancer, particularly?
In all honesty, I have not worked with children with cancer.
No, but I'm talking back when you were a teacher.
Oh, when I was a teacher?
Yeah.
I worked with the little kiddies. I loved it. I loved it. They were adorable. Like you say, you get into the soul and they're so curious and alive and questioning, and it's amazing to open up their little flowers, right? Their little buds. But in my therapy practice, although I do see some kids, I see mostly adults, teenagers and up. And in terms of therapy, I enjoy working with adults better than kids. So when I was a teacher. That's different in a classroom. But as a therapist, I enjoy working with the adults better.
Yeah.
Because that connection with speaking and going deep, that's what I love.
Yeah, because I know that you are one of the, let's say, a supporter of Franklian therapy, of Viktor Frankl, Irving Yalom, of this issue of meaning of life, of its existentialism. So, yeah, to have, as Nietzsche put it, this why to live for. Yeah.
That's so funny you said that. That's one of my notes.
Okay.
I was gonna quote that. That's so funny you said that. Yes, we think alike. That's exactly right. You have to have the purpose and the meaning, And that moves you towards being able to cope better when you have that bigger why or that bigger purpose.
You mentioned a book recently
Yeah.
called Light Beyond Darkness, Miracles Along My Cancer Journey. Could you? Uh, I ordered it. I just wanted you to know it's
Thank you.
way, yeah, from the bookshop, but till Romania it is a long way from the US, but it will arrive and I will let you know. But
Thank you.
could you share for our audience which is the story or the idea behind
Right. Yes. Yes. So
book?
So when I was going through my treatment, my friends would say to me, "So you're gonna turn this into a book too?" Because I wrote another book about 7 years ago called Living Well Despite Adversity. Because I've always been interested in the theme of how do people live good lives despite their challenges, because we only have one shot at life on this earth. We have to make it the best we can, and we all have issues and problems. So, how do we make it the best possible life we have, even though we all have our share of adversities? So, that was another book, and I had interviewed people who went through all different types of challenges. So, it was a book of interviews. This is more my story, and I didn't write it when I was going through cancer. It took me, I just wrote it now actually in August, 2 years after I finished treatment. It almost like it had to settle. I had to process it. And I read a lot, and I read a lot of memoirs. And after I read a memoir on a woman going through cancer who was also a therapist, that kind of inspired me. So I started taking my own notes, and then it became my book. So it was 2 years later. So basically, it's structured around my miracles as I perceive them to be 10 miracles. Because when I was going through my treatment, I would keep like my little gratitude journal, and I'd write down a few things, I don't want to say every day, but periodically, of what I was grateful for within the darkness, so to speak. So, for instance, I was glad that if I had to have cancer, it was in the summertime so that I could be out a lot and people could come visit me, as opposed to in the winter when I'd be stuck in the house and I wouldn't be able to get out and I wouldn't want people to visit me because of germs. So it was like finding the silver linings, right? So that was, if I had to get cancer, at least. That's kind of the way I was like looking at it. If if I if I had to have blood transfusions, at least the blood agreed with me. I didn't have an adverse reaction to all the blood transfusions I had. You know what I'm saying? So things like that. So I would keep a list. So at the end, I ended up with like 10 major ones that I perceive. Not just, of course, the biggest miracle, which is the gift of my life, but going along. And I think that when you try to see the bits of light when you're going along something so difficult, that is a coping tool that keeps you going, that you could find little pieces here and there. So my book is structured around the 10 miracles, and then the intro is my story, not long, and then my 10 miracles, and then it's using my professional experience and expertise just more generically in how people can cope with bad things that happen in their lives. And like you said, I draw from Viktor Frankl, who started logotherapy. I draw from positive psychology because I studied that and have a certificate in positive psychology, which, as we know, is the psychology of how humans flourish and how we achieve greater well-being.
Yeah, but not the tyranny of positivism, which we are talking today in the field of oncology. You should be positive. It's not this type of positivism. It's the organized way of doing things in a positive way.
Right. It's not just, Pollyanna-ish and let's sprinkle magic. So, tra la la, everything's going to be great. No, it's grounded in reality. It's saying, yes, this is dark. Yes, this is hard. Yes, this is horrible. And how can we find little things that will keep us elevated, that will keep us going? in a better way.
We'll go further on the interview talking about coping strategies and this thing with positivism. It's one from my perspective as professional is a big issue when the patients go to extreme. If you, for example, you are a negativist all your life, after a cancer diagnosis you can't be a positivist. So you shouldn't force yourself just to be positive because it is good to be positive. So these distinctions I had to make it, and you also, for our audience to understand correctly what means positive.
What means, yes. So my positive psychology professor, Tal Ben Shahar, would say we need to give ourselves permission to feel. So permission to feel means all the feelings. As human beings, we're given a palette of all feelings, the positive and the negative. And if we shut down one of them, we're shutting down everything. He says it's like all the feelings run through one pipeline. If we shut down the negative, we also shut down the positive and vice versa. So yes, we have to embrace all our feelings and give ourselves permission. So if we're terrified and if we're anxious and if we're depressed, yes, that's fine. We allow for it. We feel it. We go through it. We don't have to say, go away, go away. The poet Rumi has a beautiful poem called The Guest House. Had I printed it up, I could have read it. And he speaks, it's from the 1500s. He writes this beautiful poem saying, every morning we wake up, we welcome all the guests that's come to the door. That depression, fear, anxiety, joy, we welcome them into our home and we sit with them. Because when we accept everything, then we could deal with it better. The more we push things down, the more they'll come up in other ways. It's not just blindly being, oh, this is going to be great. This is great. I could do it. We have to allow for it all.
And to continue your idea, and now that we are talking about great psychoanalysts, yes, and like Viktor Frankl or Irving Yalom, I have to mention also Carl Rogers, if you know, with the person-centered therapy, which put it very, very nice that if we don't accept as we are, we can't change. Because he's talking about the present me, yes, and the ideal me. But if I don't accept my present me, I never can be the ideal me. So I can't do it
right
without acceptance. But as you know, I know, and everybody knows, the acceptance, yes, it is the last point on the circle of grief. So to achieve acceptance, you have to go through darkness, as you put it also in.
Exactly. It's like the line, you can't heal what you don't feel. You can't heal what you don't. So you have to allow yourself to feel. And in that feeling and noticing, you can then begin to be aware and say, how do I move further? How do I change if there's something you want to change? How do I do it differently? But you first, like you said, have to accept where you are. Otherwise, you won't know where you're going, right? You have that becomes your flashlight. This is where I am. This is where I want to be. So when I got my diagnosis and I was very crushed, I remember my friend Eve saying to me, Harriet, you need to start to think and use what you teach others on yourself. So what was the first thing that came up for me? The major concept that I think is life-changing from Viktor Frankl, which is, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, I should have written it down, but it's the idea of, it's not what happens to us. It's how we respond to what happens to us. And therein lies our choice. Because we can't choose that we got cancer, or we can't choose if, God forbid, we're hit by a drunken driver. Can't choose a lot of the bad things that happen. But what can we choose? How we respond to it. And that becomes powerful, and that takes us away from being a victim. We may be a victim of our circumstance, but we don't have to remain in that victim mentality. Because if we remain in that victim mentality, we're done. We might as well curl up under the covers.
And I like very much that you accentuated the respond word, not react. Also, Viktor Frankl, because it's like, in cancer therapy, if you respond to treatment, it's better than to react to it. It's also the same in life. We have to respond to the life challenges, not to react.
So I love that. I never thought of it in terms of cancer, that you want your body to respond well, but not react. React would be negative.
Negative. And always,
I never thought of it like that. I love
and
it.
it's when you respond to treatment, that means that you are moving forward. If you react,
Yes.
it means you're going down.
Yes. Oh, that's great. That's my takeaway.
Thank you. I'm glad. I have also a lot. I noticed a lot of takeaways as well, and I want to ask you now because I see in your speech a lot of let's say not antagonism but antonym words. Yeah, different like darkness, light. Yes, and you talk about this road, yeah, through darkness to achieve that point that is the light. Do you think that hope is the final opposite of the darkness at the end?
I think we have to hold on to hope through the darkness. I don't think it's an end point. I think it's what keeps us up during the darkness is holding on to that hope, to that glimmer of hope. And that hope, however small it is the pieces of light that have to shine through, right? I mean, like in the darkness at night, you have the moon, that's a sliver. You have some stars, if you can see them where you are. That light, those are the little things that we hold on to through a dark night, is those little bits of light, right? So we have to hold hope while we're going through our challenges. Otherwise, what are we holding on to? That becomes our life raft.
And you felt during this time hope how? As an emotion? Or you use it like a strategy, for example? Because it is here, it depends on each person's.
Right. That's a good question. Did I use it as a strategy, as an emotion? It was more like I have to hold, I almost looked at it like a thing here. Like I have to hold it. I have to hold on with the rope. I have to hold on to it. And I have to do things that will keep me up so I could maintain the hope. Because in the end, hope is what keeps us elevated. Once we lose hope, we sink. And going back to Viktor Frankl, right? When he talked about the people in the concentration camps, when people had something beyond their horror, their life, daily life in a concentration camp to hope for, whether it's seeing my family again, whether it's writing his book, whatever that hope is, you have to have something bigger than your circumstance to hold on to and hope for, right? That bigger purpose. That's what can keep us going. If we lose that, we sink much quicker. So if I'm going through my treatment and I say, oh, I want to be here for next year for my grandson's wedding, that becomes something to go for. I'm hoping for it. So it mentally, it keeps us going. That plays a lot into the body, right? We know the mind-body connection. So hope is a very powerful feeling that connects with our body. I don't know all the research of the chemicals that are released, but there are studies of the effects of hope. But again, not just silly hope. Oh yeah, this'll be fine. I'll be here for the next 100 years. You know what I'm saying? Realistic.
Yeah, realistic, yeah. Because this was the next questions, how you fit yourself in this new reality, because we all knew that cancer diagnosis put every patient in a new reality. What was before the diagnosis remained there, but after the cancer diagnosis is a new reality.
It's a new reality, right? So can I read you a quote? This is,
Please.
I put it in my book. It's by
Please.
it's a rabbi out in Los Angeles. He wrote, if you have to go through hell, don't come out empty-handed. His name is Rabbi Leader. He's actually written a lot of bestseller books. He's been on Oprah, all that. I love it. If you have to go through hell, don't come out empty-handed. My way of saying that is, if you're going to go through that, you might as well do something good with it at the end. Otherwise, what a waste, right? So the oldest saying around that is, if you go, if you have to have lemons, are you going to make your lemonade? I mean, that's the old saying. But the point is, you don't want to just, or at least I don't, I can't speak for everyone, go back to the way it was before. It's like, oh, good, now let me just resume and pick up the pieces. No, you're not just going back and picking up your pieces. You have a whole new slate now. How are you going to go forward and rebuild your life and revamp it, taking what you've been through and using it for the better? So the way I say it is, what's my goal? I want to pay it forward. Pay forward the gift of my life. So when I wake up in the morning and I do my meditation of my setting my intentions, I always say, may I pay forward the gift of my life. This is one way, writing, speaking about it, hopefully giving other people hope, inspiration.
And during all this process, trajectory, how important was for you the family support or your husband support?
Oh, that was everything. That was everything. My husband was 24/7 amazing, steadfast, committed, always there, came to every single appointment. I don't know how people do it all alone. And plenty of people do it, and they have wonderful friends and siblings. I'm an only child. I don't have siblings. My parents are no longer here. So my husband, my daughters, and friends. Some really good, close friends, but you need that. You need that. They're also your lifeline.
Because it is said that if you have family support, it's half of the recovery. We have like 10 more minutes for our interview, and I like very much to touch a subject that it's common for both of us, which is coping with cancer. And the title of our interview is Coping Through Cancer, yeah? And I want to ask you, what coping mechanism or strategies did you use?
Yeah, and a lot of it comes from positive psychology, such as, and again, these are main things that we all know about. I'm just putting it in that framework, is finding the gratitude. So it sounds weird to say, what do you find in gratitude in cancer? That's horrible. But that's the whole point. It's not about the big thing. It's finding the small things that keep us coping through the big. And that's where my miracles come in. So I want to give you an example, because it's a funny one, of one of my miracles, which again is for me, was coping. I'm terrified of throwing up, vomiting,
Yeah.
right? And the first thing that I said to my oncologist when she came in and told me about the treatment is that I'm really scared of that, and whatever, I won't get into it. It's a whole chapter. And I never threw up one single time, the whole time. So that became one of my miracles, that I never threw up the whole time of my treatment. So what am I trying to say? That it's not about the big thing. Of course, no one's grateful to have cancer, but it's when you're going through it, if you find and you can feel appreciative of small things along the way, it helps us cope. So on the days when I wouldn't feel so tired, I would go out with my husband. We love nature and walking, and I'd go sit by the water, or I'd go sit in the park amongst the pretty flowers. Even if it was just an hour, it was like, let's get out and let's just be somewhere where it's pretty. Like bringing in bits of joy. Didn't have to be big. It could be a half hour, but very intentionally saying, what can I bring into my day that will help me, even for an hour? So it's being intentional and mindful.
It's that principle, one thing at a time, or one thing at one day. So one day with one thing, not too many, not at all, but one at a time.
One at a time. Exactly. So if I felt that I could sit for my breakfast and I love the sun and my den has a lot of sun streaming in, I would take my whatever I could tolerate to eat or drink, and I'd purposely sit myself by the window where the sun would come in because that just makes me feel good. So those little things to look for and say, I'm going to do that, as opposed to just saying, I'm exhausted, just leave me be the whole day.
And as for the last question, I will ask you briefly. You talk also about grief, yeah, in your book.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask you what's your opinion about grief? It is more a perceptions than a sensorial issue, or vice versa.
So, first of all, I just want to say grief is not only over the death of someone. People
course.
connect.
Of course.
Grief is when someone dies. Grief is a feeling of loss, any loss.
It's
Someone moves.
every time, yeah.
They grieve the loss of their old home. Someone retires. They grieve the loss of their old job that's connected to their identity. So grief is a huge sense of loss over anything. And we have grief throughout our lives. So when you get a cancer diagnosis and you're going through something like big, you are grieving the loss. Or for some people, it's the loss of their old self. It could be the loss of a working organ. It could be the loss of, again, the person that they were. If someone has breast cancer, the loss of breasts. I mean, there's a lot of different ways of saying cancer brings on a feeling of grief and loss. A lot.
And the perception or sensorial? You feel it, or it's your perceptions that it is so bad?
I think it's both. I think grief has a visceral feeling. You could feel it viscerally in you. And a perception is more of a construct in your mind, to me, that I am going to have to shed something old to welcome in something new. So you have to grieve the old before you could embrace the new, right? You have to let go of the old in order to allow space for the new.
Very.
You could use as an example, somebody loses their spouse. So you have to let yourself grieve the loss of the spouse before you could attach new love to a new person. That's the way I see it. You have to let go of one to make room for another. But the letting go is the grieving process.
That's a very interesting and let's say very motivational way to end our interview today, Harriet. And I'm very glad that, let's say, we end it with a takeaway message that you have to heal, yourself by grieving, to make space to something new. You have to let that old to pass, to make space for something new, which is quite incredible as a perceptions, as a feeling, as everything. Thank you very much, Harriet, for these insightful discussions with a lot of messages, hopefully also for our audience and for me for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck further with your teaching process.
Thank you. And to you.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to OncoDaily on YouTube. Hit the bell icon to stay updated.